I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Certification of compliance, please.
Let the record show that this meeting was noticed to the news media as required by Section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Meeting agenda. The agenda is set. Next is public comments. Do we have anybody online or in the audience for public comments? Approval of minutes. There's questions? No questions? Tom Duffy, motion to approve. Stacy Hessel, second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, minutes passed. Number 9, Namakagon Transit update. Did she know she was invited or?
I thought Lynn was gonna send out, she sent out the invites to everybody.
Yeah. Well, hopefully something happened. I mean, we thought it was just important to have them on because it seemed it was a financial issue. And what committee do they report to?
Sawyer County LCO's transit,
Okay.
Namakagon Transit.
Yeah, that group was very adamant about approving and beyond what was recommended. So we just thought it was important to understand better directly from this committee. So hopefully we can get her in here before the budget. Okay. Hayward Lakes Visitors Convention Bureau. Oh, perfect. Okay, we'll circle back. Perfect. We'll come back to her and we'll now turn it over to Mike, Finance Department report.
Can't wait to see the September settlement because it's going to be huge. Well, it's not. It was down and it's down significantly across the state. Like some counties were down 30%. So I don't know what caused that. You guys were all around here in July and it was crazy. So people just were here but not buying. I don't have an explanation, but it's peculiar that the whole state was down too. If maybe there was something in how they calculated the settlements for September and maybe we'll see a bump in October. So we'll have to see, but I was not expecting it to be down and it was. Moving on to budget performance, we're now 3/4 of the way through the year. All the revenues are right on track, if not a little ahead. Expenses are the same. There's nothing that's standing out, which is good. If I look at the net of fund balance draw, which we're hoping not to have to do, our revenues are at 80%, so about 5 points over the 75. And net of the transfer to HHS expenses are at 69, so we're running a little under there. Over on revenues, under on expenses, so that's good. HHS is running a little behind. I've mentioned this before. They're very grant driven. There's always a lag in grants, so hopefully that catches up by the end of the year. And highways in really good shape for this time of year. We're got almost $600,000 profit right now. When we settle out for the year and throw in depreciation and everything, that'll change, but it's looking very good. So any questions on 24 where we're at? All right, then I will get into, this will be our 3rd or 4th look at the 25 budget. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on everything, but again, the highlights are net new construction is 1.32%, which is the highest it's been in about 15 years that we have data for. I mentioned before, that's pretty remarkable considering for 3 years in a row, we've had double-digit just appreciation and evaluation. So to actually have that in net new construction is pretty remarkable. What we're proposing for salaries is a 2% on January 1 and a 1% on July 1, and also the steps of 1.25. We have also recommended expanding the steps beyond step 11, going to step 15, because we do have several people that are maxed out. So that is included in the budget, and all salary increases are in the department budgets, not in a contingency or anything. So what you see is what you get. Health insurance includes a 5% increase. We are going to beat that, so we'll be under budget there. Sales tax revenue still has slowed, but still growing. We're actually now with September being down a little bit, we're running just behind, I believe just behind last year. Double check that. Yeah, $3,000 behind last year for the year, projected for the year. That can still change. We have 3 months left. And investments are still good. They're not what they were. Feds did lower the rates 0.5 point or 0.5 percentage in September. We are starting to see that in our returns now. The bank did lower theirs because our contract says we're tied to Fed funds, which was lowered. So now the bank has lowered theirs. The money markets haven't decreased much yet. The CD rates have gone down, so good thing we did lock in when we did. I just got an update yesterday. I think it's 4.19 to 4.75 for 12-month. So it's down from when we locked in. I think they were at about 4 or 5 to 5.25 at that point. So it makes sense if the rates went down 0.5 point that those would be affected. Budget highlights, we've looked at this numerous times. There are 6 exemptions. We use 4 of them. We currently do not use property casualty premiums or court-ordered placements. That is something we could look at in the future. Catch up 2 slides, Andy, if you would, please. This is the general fund expenditures by department. Any variations, I kind of put a note there. We are looking at reducing our transfer to other funds. So that's down from previous years. Otherwise, administration is up. We've added a safety training budget, something we haven't had before. We're actually starting to do some of that this year, even though it was not in the budget, but we're able to fit it in. IT, we have quite a bit of additional software for this year, or for 25 that is in the budget. Surveyor, there's a different employee that is on a family plan that, as I've mentioned before, switching from either no insurance to insurance or single to family has a big effect on the budget. And then the zoning tech position is in zoning. The court security support staff position is in the sheriff's. And then veterans added an insurance plan as well. But overall, the general fund is actually going down about 25,000. Any questions on that? Moving on. Okay, so this slide did get updated. In my original packet, I had forgot to update the 25 admin, but the numbers here are correct. So again, the general fund is going down a little bit. The levy would be 7.2 million. HHS is seeing quite an increase. A lot of that is due to our, is it youth justice, Andy? Yeah, a lot of placements there that we're anticipating. There are some offsetting revenues for that, but a lot of that is potentially a draw from their own fund balance. Debt service, this is the proposal with both a $2.75 million communication tower upgrade and what I had talked about shifting some more to debt service to levy out our mill rate over from 24 to 26, kind of have a balanced mill rate among the 3 years. That also affects capital improvements. That's why you're seeing quite an increase there. That includes the towers and the increase in the CIP to level out the mill rate. Highway department is seeing a little bit of an increase, and they do have some revenues that coincide with that as well. And the levy there is 1.75, very similar to previous years. Other funds, most of that increase is due to, we have some bridge work to do in 25, which is in the CIP. Part of that is we're moving money from our resource development fund, which we put some money in and with surplus money in 2022 for this. So it's a transfer, it shows up in other funds. If we did not do that, though, it would be additional CIP debt service issue. So that's why we're doing that. So the total expenditures are up quite a bit, but a lot of that is the capital projects. We had, if you looked at this budget versus 23 when we were still doing the construction here, it's very similar. But 24, we didn't have a lot of construction.
Can that resource development fund be only used for like highways and things like that, or what can that be used for?
I'm gonna let Andy answer that. He would know better than me. That one will reach.
I haven't gone back and found the resolution when the county created that to know exactly, but my understanding is it was not so much for highway projects, but for dam projects or forest related projects. Not natural resources based, but I can go back and find the actual resolution where it outlined the use of those funds. For a lot of years, I shouldn't say a lot, for up until 2 years ago, there was really no, at one time, the county used to put percent of the forestry sales into that to create it. They stopped doing that when the budget was tight. And then in 22, when you had a surplus, there was a resolution that came to the board to put money in it, knowing that there was dam projects coming up. And so that's what we've tried to do, is allocate some money to it the last couple of years, because we know we have dam projects that are coming up for, for work. It provides our match then for the municipal dam grants that have been doing the work.
One note on the debt service, that is my projections. We have not issued any debt, so that could change a little bit depending on interest rates. Any other questions? The next slide then breaks down the levy. The operating levy, which goes beyond the general fund, that has just a moderate increase, actually a little bit under the net new construction. Debt service would be kind of what we're backfilling the increase with, and that is seeing a bit of an increase, a little over 50%. Special purpose levy is going down, and we do not at this point have any state charges that they're tacking on. So you can see the total levy would go up just under 3.5%. Not a bad increase the way the consumer price index has gone up. So any questions on that? Next is the levy limit calculation. So you start out with the previous year's levy. You tack on the personal property aid to come to a new number. And then it does take into account any general levy obligation debt after 2005. There's a different number for anything prior to 2005. We retired our last pre-2005 last year, or this year actually, 24. So then you have to do the calc for net new construction, and then I actually have to back off the personal property aid again. It used to be an in and out, the number was always the same. I mentioned at the last county board meeting that we did get an additional $50-some thousand in personal property aid. That does reduce our levy then. So then our allowable levy is the 13,319,000. The reason the actual levy is 14,889 is because of things that are outside of the levy calculation. This is the levy limit calc. So basically it's libraries and ambulance service that would be above it. Any questions on that? So then moving on to requested additions, which we looked at before, the two positions, admin support for the sheriff and zoning tech. The highway had some projects that they wanted to do kind of beyond what we normally would do. It works because we do have the flexibility in CIP to increase it a little this year. So that came up with our additional request of $664,000. So then from there, next slide is the budget adjustments we've made. If we took everything as presented, the fund balance draw would have been 2.8 million. That's too much. So we made some changes to that. The first little section there are the components that make up that draw. And then that second section shows the changes we made. We are recommending reducing the request from Senior Resource Center by almost $10,000. Moving the highway road construction to CIP predominantly helped. And then HHS has built up a pretty healthy fund balance of their own. So the recommendation would be that we use their fund balance for their projected shortfall. Every year we do have quite a projected shortfall with HHS. We do not do it. We budget conservatively on revenues and high on the expenses, particularly with placements. We can't predict those. We want to have a safeguard, but since I've been here, we haven't had to tap into that at all. So that comes down to an adjusted fund balance draw of $681,000. For 24, it was $750,000. So a little bit down from this year. Any questions there?
You know, if John in the highway department applies for grants, does he get a lot through grants? The city just got another grant for $1 million to do railroad streets. I'm like, well, is the county applying for those same grants or is that not available?
No, we get a lot of grants. A lot of highway is funded through grants. Some are pretty easy to get, some are competitive. One of the projects we're doing is Highway B, and that a lot of that is grant funded. Well, I think it's a 90-10, so we're having to pay 10%.
The municipalities, I think the city of Hayward's street construction projects are block grant funded, which county roads are not eligible for those.
So moving on, further breakdown of the levy components. Oh, next slide, please. Apologize, some of these get pretty small and hard to read. The operating levy is just a minor increase over previous years. That does make up about 43% of the overall levy. Health and Human Services, again, we try to keep things pretty consistent. That's about 19%. Next couple are unchanged. Debt service has seen an increase, and then highway is pretty flat as well. So then you can see the overall operating levy. Again, the reason the operating levy is up because of debt service. The reason debt service is up because our special levy is going down, and that is due to ambulance. And there are two components for that. The operating need is down because we have fund balance. I had said that any fund balance we build up will be used to reduce taxes the second year later, so that's what we're doing there. We are now to the point where we're on an every other year ambulance purchase, so this is an off year. So between the two of those, we're down almost $600,000 in ambulance service. So that's why we're increasing CIP to not have a dip in the mill rate and then have it go up again when we have to fully fund ambulance for 26. So there again, you can see the increase in the levy. There's a minor change in the county valuation. The actual TID out numbers were not out when I put this together. When I did my own research, I backed off what I thought was a TID amounts. I backed off one. There are actually two Hayward TIDs. I didn't know about the second one. That's about 1.5 million. Sounds like a lot of money, but on a valuation of 6 billion, it doesn't even change the levy rate. So the bottom number doesn't change of 2.46, but the county valuation will be a little different. Any questions there? Next is the ambulance service levy. Kind of discussed this already, but here are the calculations. start out with what we need from operations, add in the indirect and allocated cost, come up with an operating levy, and that's down a little over 300,000. We're not purchasing an ambulance this year, so that's down again. And there you can see the effect on the mill rate for the levy alone went from almost 33 cents to just under 20 cents. Any questions there? Next is library service. This is kind of a history of what each different library has received. Northern Waters is fairly consistent with a small increase each year. We've pretty much held Weiss Community consistent. The number on the right you see is what they would get under the formulary. Surrey County has always elected to give more to Weiss and Winter libraries than the formulary. You can also see the trajectory for Winter and what their formulary would be. And then LCO, we have historically funded at the formulary. And then the big section under that are the out-of-county libraries, and they are to be funded by the formulary. So you can see the bottom line, we're up a little bit from last year. And actually, a lot of that is due to the out-of-county circulation. Next is the outside organizations outside of the library. The ones we fund are Senior Resource Center, Nemacolin Transit, Hayward Lakes, Northwest Regional Planning, and the Fair and Economic Development. And so you can see Senior Resource looking from 2017 on, we've actually increased our funding quite a bit. It was fairly consistent until, well, actually when Andy and I got here in 22 for the 23 budget, we did quite an increase to them, and we've given them an increase every year since then. Nemacolin Transit had been flat again until Andy and I got here. We did give them an increase. We again are not recommending changing that for 25. So our budget we present to the board will be this. The board wants to change it, they have every right to. Hayward Lakes has been the same since 2018. We haven't changed that. Northwest Regional Planning fluctuates a little bit, but over the course it's been pretty unchanged. And the Fair has seen some increases a little bit prior to us, Andy and my coming here. And then it looks like it's down a little bit, but we do some through CIP now as well. So they're actually a little bit up in their funding. And then Economic Development, we did increase last year, recommending keeping that flat for 25. And then you can see a breakdown of Senior Resource. There is a flow-through fund of just under $80,000 that is a grant that we just passed through to them. The number right above that is the amount that comes out of other county revenues. Any questions or discussions on outside organizations?
I do. I wish Gary would have been here this morning to say this, but I know Nemacolin Transit needs, I don't remember what they were asking for right off the top of my head. Mike, do you remember what it is?
They asked for 165,000
Okay.
in general, so they didn't change that. They asked for 15,000 addition in CIP or capital.
Okay.
Buses and wages, I thought she said.
What's that?
Buses and wages, I thought she said.
I'm not sure, but I explained, and I believe Gary did too, to Andy, what you're looking at, what they have in capital. That they have to pay out at the end of the year back to the state. So they don't have that. That's not their money. So I guess I don't know why you guys are taking a look at that and saying they have all this money sitting there and it's not theirs. It belongs to the state.
Well, what we're looking at is fund balance, which would include, but that includes any outstanding revenues or any outstanding debts at any given time, so.
Because I know Nemocog Transit has to have a local match in order to get their grants. If they don't have a local match, they're not gonna get grants.
Yep,
So, I guess that's why I'm pushing it and that's why the Nemocog Transit Board is gonna push it. And they probably will at the board meeting.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thanks, Mike.
Just on the fund balance. So we took that up prior to Carrie because the fund balance has been $1 million and it's been going up on their books. Because that includes their cash on hand plus their receivables, less their payables. So, yeah, I was just gonna say, too, regarding Namacon Transit, when we've gotten the request this year, they asked for 165 and 15 CIP. Prior years, that 150 or 155 that's been requested has been broken down. I think 125 is, I mean,
previous years, Karen, was it?
yes,
She would, out of the 150, she would put 100 in the operating budget and 50 in the capital. So she was breaking it down herself, taking the actual county allocation, breaking it down according to how she could maximize the match that way. So that's a difference this year versus how it was done previously. Yep. The next slide just shows why we're able to fund these organizations. We fund the statutory or the statute that allows for it. You want to go down one, Andy?
Yep.
And then the next one is the capital.
let me just talk about that quick. That came up at the conference and then on the county call last week again. Just a reminder that if we do, I mean, these things have all been vetted out, but when we fund, especially outside organizations or requests, we have to go back and make sure there's statutory authority. There's been, they talk about the food shelf decision. You know, counties at one point, I think during COVID, wanted to provide money to food pantries. And when the Atolis Law, or Andy Phillips working for the county association, put out a memorandum, they reissued it last week actually, just showing like food pantries where it does not fit actually in county authority to fund. So we always have to go back and look in chapter 59 to make sure that it's an authority granted to the county by statute to expend funds on, or it's a program of the county. So kind of it's been reemphasized here recently. Not sure if there are some other things happening in other counties, but we just have to, we've done that for all these organizations, but if at some point there was others, we'd have to kind of go back and do that same review in the statute.
All right, this one is really small, but we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. This is the capital project summation of all the requests. So the final debt issue would be 1.638, and you can see the other revenues that we have there. There's a Veterans Transportation Grant, there's a dam grant. Those are almost always 50-50, or maybe they are always 50-50. So that $800,000 dam, we're getting 400 from the state. And then you can see the other 400, which is transfer from other funds. That's that transfer from Resource Development Fund. We have sale of assets of 150,000. Almost all of that is highway because their equipment is worth more. We don't get a ton for our squads, but we do get something for them. And then there's an LRIP fund, which is also highway. The next slide shows what is actually being requested. IT is actually down quite substantially from the last couple of years. They've been doing a lot of projects. It's more minimal now. We're looking at the Huber roof in the jail, also the air handler and AC in the jail, and the Oasis roof, which needs to be done. County Fair, I can see there 2 requests equaling $10,000. So I add that to the 40,000 for operating, we're at 50, which is a little bit up from where we've been. I think it was 47,000 last year. Sheriff would like a UTV. A lot of the enforcement they do on the trails, you can't drive a squad down, so that would help there. We do have the squads in there again. Tough books for the squads. The airport does have a state project we're looking at. Our match would be $160,000. We are going to pull some from other funds for that. Part of that, there's the dam. Forestry is getting like a truck, and then you can see all the highway equipment and some of the road construction that we moved into CIP. And then there are the revenue sources to get the net down to that 1.638.
Mike, so the airport project that was discussed last, that's separate from that?
I don't
Yeah.
believe this is part of that, no.
No, the airport project, what was discussed last night is the master plan,
Okay.
the plan going forward. The project on here is the one that was approved probably 3 years ago, and it was delayed a year to resurface the runway. Yep.
Any other questions on CIP? All right, so then the next slide is something I put together for a possible debt issue for a communication tower, which we have discussed at a few board meetings now.
You're bringing that back?
Well, this is what it would cost if we did it on our own. So again, the way I've put it in here is a little bit on the front end because we have some room in our mill rate to do that. Then a kind of a smooth increase to keep the mill rate consistent. And then the 2034 payment would be higher because we have this debt would be falling off in, or no, not this one. What was, oh, the second half of this one, that 4 million would be falling off in 2033. So we could increase the payment in 2034 to keep the overall county mill rate level. So that's why you're seeing that variation and why I highlighted those two boxes. Any questions or discussion on that one?
So this is for the, going back to that whole issue, this is for the option A.
Yes.
This is constructing, this is the equipment, the microwave backhaul, 2 towers. Yeah, and we own and operate the network. There is a resolution that came out of public safety this month to the next week's board meeting, kind of summarizing that and green lighting the 2.75 budget and moving ahead on it. But it's been included in the financial impact or borrowing has been included in the budget already.
And this is the one that would be an estimate because we have not issued debt. So we don't know the exact repayment schedule. I do have a meeting with PMA after this meeting to start discussing that though, what it could actually look like.
We are keeping it to a 10-year issue, which is probably more realistic for the life expectancy of the equipment.
So then the next slide is the current repayment schedule. It does, actually I did put the towers on here and the CIP for 25, which would issue in 24. I always put the disclaimer on the bottom. This is current debt and actually these two projected items, but annually we will do a CIP issue. So don't look at this and think, well, our payments are going to keep going down, but those will be filled because the column that says 24 CIP will have a number each year moving forward. And then I did put on the bottom what that number could look like. There's a variation because of being on the biannual ambulance purchase. I'm trying to get everything so the mill rate stays the same. So when we buy an ambulance, we'll have a lower CIP. When we don't buy an ambulance, we'll have a little elevated CIP. So that the combination of those two remains the same. Any questions on that? All right, the final slide of this first deck then is the tax rate history with the estimated 25 of 2.46. To decrease, it's not because your taxes are going down, it's because our valuation is growing faster than the levy is growing. I always want to make that clear. Any questions on that? So moving on then, I want you to look at the fee schedule. This was not in the packet. I handed it out this morning. This would have been 11C2. I'm just going to highlight potential changes that we're looking at. If you turn to page 3, this is coming from departments. We have not vetted all of them yet. This is one we probably are going to want to work on a little because the increases are pretty aggressive for the ambulance service. So Andy and I will schedule a meeting with John to discuss these, and you'll probably see something in the middle before we approve these.
Where does that proposal for the Round Lake, that die in committee or is that?
Has not died. I kind of at a standstill where I need to communicate with Round Lake and tell them where we're at. What I've told the committee, a couple things. One is if we're having a third station, if we were going to have a third station, it wouldn't necessarily be in Round Lake. I mean, we're kind of acting on the offer that Round Lake made to provide land to construct a building. The other thing is it's been really hard to spend time working on that because the bigger issue is we don't have enough staff to fill the spots we already have. And we're trying to address that. I mean,
So if it doesn't die, would that be on 26 then?
yeah, I mean, realistically, and one of the reasons that is because we're short, I think 5 paramedics right now. No, the only good thing is that we see some hope there because we have 4 paramedics. 4 of our current EMTs should be graduating and have their paramedic license in January. So we'll be able to at least get to full staff for the ambulances we're already running. And then it's a little more realistic to talk about, okay, growing the service from there. No, and I've said this a couple months, I need to get together with John and Kay, and I have another name to go out and at least have a conversation that we haven't forgot about it. It's just difficult.
I mean, then that means that they may still think that if we even were to do it, goes back into that place would also be servicing Hayward too. So that it kind of gets them partially to where they want to be, right?
Right, and that's, part of the other, that's when you start getting into looking at,
That at all?
who's that?
Town around?
No, none of it. Not unless they've listened to
Right.
any of the comments I've made, but that's,
Either, but I just
yeah,
didn't sound like they knew a lot when they talked.
no. And that's gonna be, I mean, ultimately, I can put it in front of the board and we've talked about if it's just money, money's no object or money is the object, depending on who you are. But, and John Fremmel and I have talked about, okay, how could we accomplish anything to make the town somewhat satisfied? Could we shift an ambulance that we already have, station it at Round Lake, or not station, but position it in Round Lake? But even if it was a semi-permanent or permanent base, because of the volume of calls in the Hayward, town of Bass Lake, town of Hayward area, anytime the Hayward ambulance goes out, you're going to pull that one in. If Ojibwa goes out, you're going to shift everybody around so you keep the county covered. I just fear that we build a station in the town of Round Lake for an ambulance that's never there. Because there just isn't the volume of calls in Round Lake, Spider Lake area. And I don't want to.
We don't have to go down this rabbit hole too long, but to just the observance of looking at the numbers. I mean, I'm not an ambulance expert. It doesn't look like the numbers justify. We're trying to do our best to appease it. Have they seen those numbers?
Well, I know you and Kay have. I don't know if have you given them.
No, I've not, unless Kay has, right?
The one gentleman that I've listened to speak, he has a study, but I think it might be the study from prior to the one they did one maybe 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The one we've looked at, I've shared with you, is from 2018.
So it's more recent.
Yeah.
And then the sales tax going down actually doesn't jive with his. They wanted some of the money of the great sales revenue that was happening, and so that. Okay.
Yep.
It's a delicate situation. I mean, I understand every life is precious, but
Yeah, and I'm trying to get like a hard number that I can put out there for response time. Wisconsin doesn't have a standard, like a published standard, like this is how quickly an ambulance should be able to arrive on scene. But just the information out there from other rural services in Wisconsin, and the whole state's probably more than Wisconsin struggling with services because there just isn't the volunteers.
right,
More people are going to paid services or full-time staff. And our paramedic issue is there's just not, if you're hiring a paramedic right now, you're stealing them from another service.
from another area.
There's
Right.
just not as many coming out. But, this is a hard thing to say, but to tell somebody that a 30-minute response time for an ambulance to arrive is not unusual in rural Wisconsin.
Right.
And people don't want to hear that, especially, I think it's another situation where potentially people who move here from a more urban area or a more populated, dense area, just expect an ambulance to be there in 10 minutes or 15
Right.
minutes. And in rural Wisconsin, that's just not the case. So I know we've looked at the response times from Hayward to Round Lake, not unusual. I mean, we have areas of the county that have longer response times to get an ambulance.
Yeah.
But I understand, nobody wants to hear.
No, it's a tough, yeah. If it's in your backyard versus,
Mm.
I mean, there's 15 districts too. So I mean, I don't,
I'll just say some of the other things, we've had other issues, the ambulance that we've been working on that I think have settled down. Looks like airport, tourist rooming house, some of the things we've been working on are coming to a head, so I should have more time to get out to Round Lake and have a conversation.
All right, then moving on to page 22. Coming from the treasurer, there's a small recommended change there on the tax deed to have things at actual cost. That would include mailing, mowing, upkeep, advertising, all that stuff. And part of that is the changes in the laws of what we can collect.
Yeah, and we put that change in as, it's essentially somewhat of a placeholder because you're gonna see a resolution next month on the we have to change our tax deed process to meet the new state code, and we'll include the fees in that resolution as well.
And then the final one is another small one on page 25. This is zoning. You can see in the red down there, for small buildings, the fee also includes storage sheds on vacant land. So not a lot of changes in the fee structure. Whoops, what happened?
I didn't touch it. I think there's two departments, sheriff and criminal justice, that we're still verifying some fees and having discussion about a new fee in the sheriff's department that we have not concluded that with the sheriff yet.
Next, and I won't spend any time on this because I've already looked at it, but I'm just kind of following what will be the presentation next week. And this is a capital purchase summary that we already took a look at. Next is our full-time equivalent count, and you're going to see three changes here. Number one is that zoning tech addition. Number two is the sheriff court security support staff position. And then at the airport, we are no longer having staff do some of the work out there. We're either contracting it or, well, we are contracting it one way or the other, either with the manager or someone else. Or even highway has done some of the work too. So the net is an increase of 1.5. Any questions on that? The next slide, this is going to get really small. It is the two grids. for compensating staff. The top half is well, actually, I'll start with the bottom. The bottom one is January 1. The top one is July 1. And this does show the addition of the steps 12, 13, 14, and 15. I kept 11 highlighted because that will still be kind of our base calculation step. So I do the calcs on that one and then multiply the percentages, like the 101.25 from that column. So that's why that one's still highlighted, but the new control point would be at 15. And again, this is in the budget already. Questions there? Just trying to keep up with neighboring counties. Yeah. We're working on it. I really don't want to go through page by page this next one unless you want us to. This is just kind of the line by line budget, a little more detailed than we've looked at. You can look at that in your free time unless anyone has any questions. It is several pages long. All of this is out on the website now too. All right.
Maybe just a follow-up comment on Stacy's comment about doing better. So, I mean, our goal for this year and last year was essentially to match the union contract. That's kind of the discussion when we put the contract together, was to try to make sure we keep our other employees keeping up with the union contract. So are we starting to think about next year? Because next year, about 26, because that'll be the start of the next union contract. And, doing better and keeping up with other counties is getting more difficult. But,
And to clarify, I didn't mean you need to do better. I meant we need to do better than the other counties. So I just didn't want you to, I wasn't
No, that's
trying to
how
be.
we took it.
Okay, all right, good.
we understand. So yeah, so we started to put thought into how we're going to do that and where we might end up to keep up. And we've talked about wanting to be an employer of choice again. And I think, things have improved significantly in the last couple of years for hiring here. And I don't know that it's anything necessarily that we did. Things changed in the community, but you notice we've been able to fill out like jail staff, dispatch staff. We've, in other positions, we are getting more applications. So there is some positive. Obviously, everything depends on what happens in the rest of the world as far as being competitive. But yeah, I mean, to go beyond 3% is tough. Even 3% is tough when you look at our net new construction is 1.3% this year. And that gives us
140,000.
140,000. I mean, and what is a 3% lift on our staff every year? And put you on the spot.
Probably 350,000.
Yeah. So, our net new construction is even hard for us to get because as we've seen the economic, the growth in valuation because of economic, not necessarily new construction. So if we have a 12% increase in our equalized value this year, that means next year our, what's the easiest way to say this? Net new construction is based on a percentage of your new construction versus your equalized value. So if equalized value keeps jumping up by big amounts, and it's mostly because of economic means, like just the price of real estate goes up, the amount of new construction needs to increase that much every year just to get a 1% growth. It gets harder and harder, is what I'm saying. So, and that's really the only new money, that new revenue that comes in to support our expenses. Like Mike's pointed out, our sales tax is plateauing. Investment income is probably going to start to go down a little bit now. We've been fortunate to have that, so it just gets harder. So in order to do better and make sure we retain our best employees, it might mean sacrificing some other. We're going to get to the point where we're going to have to start looking at what are our priorities.
Yeah, everything we bring forward to you, we're always looking at what it's going to look like 5 years down the road. So if we don't move as fast as you would like, that's part of the reason is we're trying to protect the future too. All right. Next slide then is moving on to CIP. We did have little door control work from IT, some build outs on squads, and one new squad came in. Squads are coming in, all vehicles are coming in pretty quickly now. You know, we're waiting up to 18 months sometimes, and now they're here in a couple months, which is good. And then the fan array for the maintenance, which gives us some redundancy for heating and air conditioning in the sheriff's wing. Any questions there? The next is the investment report.
Oh, can I go back to the budget?
Sure.
Just to Mr. Buckholz's comments, I mean, and we mentioned this, I think, at last month's board meeting too. You know, at this point, our work at admin, Mike's work is done. We've turned it over to you, so you can do whatever you want with it. It won't hurt our feelings. So the only thing we would ask is if you want to make changes, you know, I think maybe a motion or something, or because depending on what change you might want to make to the budget, might change other things. You know, we have to put it in the budget and it might change, you know, the levy.
Correct.
Or if it's, you know, some things it might just be that we draw more out of the general fund. Some things might be outside the levy cap. It's a special levy. So it would just help if you say, this is what I want to do, and Mike can recalculate the budget. And what I think you would do is then when the budget gets to the board, you'd say, this is, you know, this was the admin's budget. Here's the finance recommended budget, if you wanted to do it that way. Or you can make amendments right on the floor at the board meeting as well to amend the budget. So I don't want, you know, I don't want to pretend like we're ignoring any concerns, comments. You're free to make changes. Just let us know what you want to do, and Mike
Make it happen.
Make it happen.
Sorry, I don't want to disrupt the flow. I want to respect our guest time too. I mean, how much, your investments review and update next?
That was a good break, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go back to 11, which is the Hayward Lakes Visitors Convention Bureau update, Cheryl Treeland, and then we'll come back, finish up with Mike. That sounds good.
I was late. Some of you, this is going to be
Review.
good.
Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm speaking on behalf of the Hayward Lakes Visitor Convention Bureau, Sawyer County, Wisconsin, USA. And I started doing some work after I retired on something that I'd always thought would be interesting to do. So I've got a compilation of some of that stuff in here, and I've got stacks about this high of spreadsheets on all kinds of stuff, different ways, shape, and form, looking back at the history of tourism in Sawyer County. I presented this the other day to the Economic Development Committee, so 4 of you have to bear with me, and I'm trying to make it shorter today and just touch on things. I started with just an outline here of where tourism has been in Sawyer County, and basically where the income comes from, what the purpose has been for that. So the cover sheet here is going to consolidate a lot of what I went through the other day. Going back to 1934 to 35, it's one of the first lake associations that was formed, the Lake Chippewa Flowage Resort Association. Okay, and it was done with volunteers, and we had actually the resorts, I shouldn't say resorts, I should say fishing camps at that time that pooled together and had leadership there that tried to turn around and start marketing to get these people out of the city, and all of their ads were like Fresh Air, Starry Nights, and all of this stuff that were in there, the ads going way back then, getting the people out of the city and getting them into the northern Wisconsin air. And the Chippewa Flowage was the first one started that, and they did it with dues to the people that joined, hopped on board, and also all the rest of it was all volunteer labor. Okay, but that was their mission, was to try to get people out of the cities into northern Wisconsin. Okay, in 1952, so about not quite 20 years later, other properties around and other businesses around the Sawyer County area were saying, you know, this seems to be working pretty good for the Chippewa Flowage. why don't we try to use something that's for a broader area? So in 1952, discussion began at that time with local business leaders, and it was like Quentin Johnson from People's National Bank and an attorney in town, Walt West from the dairy. I can't even think of some of the others right now. Anyway, they got together and they just started talking with a few of the resorters out there, fishing camp people out in the Chippewa Flowage, and they ended up forming a new corporation, and Quentin Johnson did all the legal work on it. He was an attorney, and they actually formed and incorporated in November of 1953. Okay, the income for that was based on dues to people who joined as members, okay, commissions from people who were members who had placements, people coming in, visitors that were placed through the information booth into their properties, and they paid a commission to have that done. So, and the commissions were based on how far out you were with the reservation being made. So if someone was in January and it was for July, you would pay a minimal amount of commission. But if it was July 4th and someone drove in town, which was they often used to do, and they'd drive to the information booth and say, I'm here with the family of 4, I want to stay for a week, find me a place. All right, and they'd start making the calls, or they'd have a list there ready to go and call. Obviously, that was, I think, about 25% commission that was paid for last minute reservation type of things like that. Okay, so we had dues, commissions, and again, a lot of volunteers. Over the years, then we started to start paying staff on there. And the basically was to market all the Hayward Lakes areas for their members. So that was a critical part. It was for members. They're the ones that are paying the due. They're the ones paying the fees. They're the ones that are finding the volunteers to go to 10-day sport shows and everything like that. Okay, in 1953 then, after it was incorporated, the first Hayward Lakes Visitor Guide was published. The first one was 10,000 copies, and that was paid for by advertising by the members, dues from the members, volunteers volunteering all their help for it, and they had a minimally paid staff that started in 53, and then over the years that increased to being full-time plus more than just one staff person. Okay. Also at the sports shows back then, they wanted the guide to feel like it was worth something. So the sports shows had a value on them. So they were 25 cents when they first came out, and it went up, and they went up to about $2 before they said, this is crazy. But they did it even though they handed them out free. They wanted the people to make it feel like it had a value to it. So if they printed a value on the front of this thing, it had a value to it. All right. Even though they were giving it free. So they felt they were getting something free. Anyway, that was in 53, and they were distributing these books all over regionally here. So they were into, anywhere in the Midwest, going to sport shows primarily at that time. Okay, over the years then, what happened, some of these people that were involved with the Hayward Lakes Resort Association came to the county board and said, we're bringing all these people. Tourism is really growing here in Sawyer County. We think that the taxpayers should have some skin in the game. So with that, they started talking to the Sawyer County Board. So in 1962, the Sawyer County Board actually approved and created a new entity called the Sawyer County Recreation Association, and that was used taxpayers' funds on it. I don't know what it was back in 62, but I know by starting probably in the late 80s, early 90s, it was $66,000 that we were getting annually from the Sawyer County to go to Sawyer County Rec. Okay. Now, both Sawyer County Rec and Hayward Lakes Resort Association both had the same mission. We're both trying to bring in people from out of the area to come in and enjoy everything that we have here in Northwest Wisconsin. All right. So with that, they were doing the vacation guides. We were doing the sport show booths. We were doing the labor, the administration, all of it, the plan itself, the marketing plan, where we were going, what we were doing was totally done and paid for by the Hayward Lakes Resort Association, which I'm going back to was dues by the members and commissions paid by members. Okay. But after Sawyer County Rec and Hayward Lakes, they started doing flip-flopping, like say sport shows was a big, huge expense in the budget at that time because they were 10-day shows with a day of travel before and after. Sport show booths themselves were a major investment because they were not something where now you pull up the screen and you got your big, beautiful pictures here and you pull up several of those, you throw a table down and a couple of chairs and you're ready to go. Back in the day, it used to be trailers that you'd have to pull, and the trailers had the jackknife tongues on them. They'd reel them into place there and then jackknife them up, open them out, and you'd have mounts. So you'd have wildlife and fish mounts physically there to display, and they were all anchored into these trailers. So there was a big investment in that. So what they did was they started flip-flopping years, say the Milwaukee Sentinel show, which is a huge show and still is to this day. 1 year Hayward Lakes would do it, the next year Sawyer County Rec would do it, okay? But Hayward Lakes would make sure that all the contracts were taken care of. Hayward Lakes would make sure all the checks were cut, everything was taken care of, that the labor was there, that the books being taken down, et cetera, any literature was going down. They made sure everything was going down to the appropriate show. So they've been the administrator of it from the beginning of the marketing plan. Okay, in 92 or 93, and I can't remember what it was, I was chairing the committee at the time, we invited the Hayward Area Chamber, which used to just do a little book about the size of the visitor. It was just black and white, and it just had a list. It was a directory of who their members were, and that's all that it was, okay? To subsidize, they had a few little black and white ads in there to help subsidize paying for that vacation, or for that directory. So in 92, 93, we thought, the people are all coming here, maybe they want to know that there's a Trombley Sweet Shop on Main Street. Maybe they want to know who a realtor is in the town or whatever. So we invited the Hayward Area Chamber to merge into our book. And so they agreed. And now we had the book that was paid for by members buying ads, dues coming in because we have all the promo pages in there that have to be paid for, volunteers volunteering all their time for it. And we had a paid staff year-round, working on the vacation guide, distributing the vacation guide. And again, it's distributed throughout the Midwest, especially sports shows. Okay, in 2002, okay, all of this stuff was going back and forth. Hayward Lakes is managing everything that is happening. And we have the county tax funds over here, taxpayer funds. We have dues and commissions over here. So we're like, can we merge these two? So it came to the county board, and I know I was the person that did it, and said, can we turn around and merge these two, Hayward Lakes and Sawyer County Rec? Because it only makes sense rather than all this back and forth of checks and everything else and making sure people know what's going on. And they said, yeah, we could do it if all of the municipalities agree. So out to every municipality in Sawyer County, got their approval at all of those levels, came back to the county level, and they said, yes, you can do it. Okay, with that, we merged the Hayward Lakes Resort Association and Hayward Lake and Sawyer County Recreation Association in 2003 to present, okay? To be the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau, Sawyer County, Wisconsin, USA. It is a 501c6, and the HLVCB, or Hayward Lakes, whatever you want to call it there. Okay, there we now have dues that are paid in by members. We have the Sawyer County government contribution to it. We have marketing partners. What our marketing partners are, when we formed the VCB, we were like, we want to try to get as many people in as members on board as we can. And we realized that a lot of the smaller resorts, the smaller businesses would support tourism, but they may have something that's closer to home and closer to their own personal passion that they want to make sure they're a member of and they're more active in. So say as example, the Quiet Lakes. People out there, they might be, well, I'll join the Quiet Lakes, but Hayward's too far away back then. I don't want to be involved with Hayward, but I'll join the Quiet Lakes. So the Quiet Lakes then, we solicited those and they joined on as a marketing partner of the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. Okay, we did that with all, so the lake associations, we have representation from events, we have non-lodging members, we have lodging members, and we're all in here. And if you flip over and your handout, the second page in is a bright yellow one, is the umbrella, and that's what I'm going to refer to here. You can see all of the people, all of the marketing partners that we have there. So that's another source of income is the marketing partners. We also have room tax coming in. We get grants from like the Department of Tourism, and there's also advertising in the guidebooks. Now the guidebooks, when we do them, the marketing partners can control their own sections. So say, I'm just saying the Quiet Lakes as an example, they commit to say they want to take 4 pages. They can sell out those pages at whatever they want. Hayward Lakes sells it to those marketing partners at our cost, all right, of what it is to cost it, to the cost to print it. Okay, we do not include the distribution. We cover that with our other income in our marketing budget there. But our cost is, and it's about $1,700 something a page, $1,540 per page. So that's what we sell it out. Okay, that entity may go and sell a full page ad for $2,200 to $2,300. So they can use it as a fundraiser for their entity also. Okay, so those are the sources of income there. And on the yellow page with the umbrella, you can see that we have the LCO tribal government. So they buy like a section in the book and they put all of their ads, they get them displayed and everything else, and work with the advanced printing, getting it all laid out. We have the Sawyer County Government, the Hayward Chamber of Commerce, the Quiet Lakes Tourism, Chippewa Florida Resort Association, the Winter Area Chamber of Commerce, Birchwood Area Chamber, Town of Namakagon, Town of Hunter, from Room Tax, Town of Hayward Room Tax, Town of Round Lake Room Tax, the Nelson Lake Resort Association, and the Town of Bass Lake Room Tax. So all of this comes together. We meet monthly, every month except for June, July, and August, unless there was something major that we had to meet for. Then it would be probably just the executive board would meet during those times. But when we go through this, we have our marketing plan, which we develop, and it's every monthly, and Mindy, it used to be Sherry, would report to probably this committee, I know they did, to the economic development, on what we're actually doing out there and doing it for all of Sawyer County. It doesn't matter to us if people are members of the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau or not, but a lot of them become members indirectly by being a member of, say, the Hayward Area Chamber is like 350 plus strong. Those 350 members are brought in as kind of I call it coming in the back door to being a member, all right? Because maybe that's where they're going to be with the chamber first, but yet we're still supporting them at the VCB level for all of Sawyer County. And that's basically what we do. We do the marketing plan, we implement the marketing plan, we look for things, we hire professionals to keep us on the cutting edge of like search engine optimization. We have a year-round staff in there. We own the building cooperatively with the Hayward Area Chamber. We have a separate fund, 50-50. We split all the costs of the building. It used to be, when it was this Hayward Lakes Resort Association, it was a little brick building that was where the big Berkey sign is, right at 27 and 63. Used to be there. That was bought out by the state when they redid 63 and 27 and widened the lanes and everything there at the intersection. And that's basically what we do. The rest of the stuff that I have here is just information I had that I collected out of all the Hayward Lakes Resort Association books and Hayward Lakes Visitor Guides, Hayward Lakes VCB, and you can see going down right after that, and you can look at it as you want. The ones that are like highlighted are the peak of the time, but they're broken down by lakes there. And there are 2 pages there going through 2003. That's the Hayward Lakes Resort Association. These would be members only that you would have on there, and they're broken down by lakes. So that's just for your information to look at. And after that, we've got a summary of the lodging members. And this is of the HLVCB, the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau, from 2004 to 2024. And we've got it broken down by all types up at the top, how many members we have. Got them broken down by resort members, private vacation homes, property management companies, motels, conference centers, bed and breakfast, and campgrounds and RVs. And then you can go to each of the following pages after that, and you can see broken down again by lake areas where they're at, so you can see the difference. And as I said the other day, I'm on the Tourist Rooming House Committee also. We got 599 licenses here, according to Andy, in the county. And so as we look at all of those licenses, and you look at, okay, how many resorts are out there? When you look at our membership, if we have, say, a property management company that is a member of the VCB and they've got 20 homes, it's going to be 1 membership to us, but there might be 20 homes out there that they could be renting out. A lot of these VCBs that we see out there, or a lot of the tourist rooming houses that we see out there, are ones that used to be resorts that got chopped up because it's a lot easier and more money for whoever was trying to sell it historically. To get out of the business, where it wasn't something being worked out between generation and generation, to keep it within a family. So, any questions? Stacy told me try to keep it short, so I'm trying to.
So just a question, I guess, a request. So thank you for this history, because I think it's crucial, but also, crucial that the county supports the economic development and tourism. But could you highlight the importance of getting the funds from the county? I know it's used for marketing, but if you're decreasing, if the resorts are decreasing, it's decreasing your funds also. So I just would like you to, if you could focus on highlighting that.
Well, our membership may look like the membership is down, but we do have room tax that we have coming in. Okay, we have 4 municipalities that we have room tax coming in from. In 2023, we took in like $283,000. So almost probably 55% of our income was from room tax. And as I said, the 4 municipalities, you got Hayward, Hunter, Bass Lake, and who's my other one? Round Lake, all right, that are contributing into the room tax to Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. Okay, the rest of the county municipalities out there are all riding on our shirt tails, you know, but we have taxpayers' funds in here. Because of the taxpayers' funds, we're covering all of Sawyer County. We aren't being just like the Hayward Lakes Resort Association. It was totally based and funded 100% by dues, volunteers. We did Hayward Lakes Resort Association. So if somebody else had something open, they had a motel in town here that was sitting open, and they tried to get us to fill them, we're not going to fill you. We're going to go to our members first. Now we cover countywide, and everyone can let us know what they have for openings, et cetera, promotion things, all the social media things, events going on in the area, all of that. We promote all of that. People can come to us with something that they want to get out, that they're doing on their lake or whatever it might be of interest to tourism. We have no problem. We provide the staff, we've got the people, we've got the expertise, and we provide it for everyone in the county because we do have taxpayers' funds in there.
All right, so the $50,000 or whatever money you can get from the county makes you operate. The funds from the town, the rooming tax is just a bonus because 30% goes to the township. So
Yeah.
that's just a bonus. So that's what I just wanted to make concrete, that it's important to receive all of the funds, but you can't operate if you don't have the county funds, correct?
Yeah.
Is that we can only use the room tax.
That's what I was just gonna
for
say.
For certain things, there's a statute that,
Right.
it
Yeah.
can only be used for tourism promotion. So there's other things like even just operating our information center, which the county funds, absolutely help so much with because, we get a ton of people.
I know,
in
I have a
and
question.
Room tax statutorily can only be used to create overnight stays. All right. So that's what we're looking for. Someone that comes up with an event that would, would be, say, Winterfest way back when. All right. Winterfest was an event. We had no problem totally behind it. And any promotional materials, any promotion of it, marketing of, say, Winterfest as an example, we can turn around and do that with room tax funds. But we can't turn around and pay for the labor if they've got someone coming in or pay for something for someone to do something. We can't pay for our lights, we can't pay for the building, we can't pay for our staffing, but we can pay for literature that they might create, the actual printing of it and stuff like that, composition of it, layout, because room tax is for heads in the beds, and that's what it's collected on, and that's has to be the purpose of what room tax is used for.
Right,
What-
we know that. I just wanted you to educate the people
Yeah.
that sometimes question that. So thank
Yeah.
you.
I want to go back to the sales tax revenue being down. This is for you or both of you or one of you. What are your thoughts on that of why sales tax revenue is down? Any,
Did you look out the
Hypothesis.
window? December, January, February, and March?
so you think it just also
Oh,
falls back
no
to the
snow.
winter?
Yeah, they had no snow.
But this last one, is that for the this was for the summer though, right? July.
July settlement.
The July settlement, but you're always in arrears. So the July settlement would be April, May, and June, all right? So you're always in arrears and,
Well, no, there's our
you know-
December settlement was.
December
snow,
settlement.
which we figure is kind of reflective of July.
okay.
Look, this is your room tax. Are you?
I'm just saying because
Okay.
because I think in a visual
Well-
eye, we look busy. but
Well,
it didn't show
I
up
can
in
tell
the
you
sales.
one reason might be, and I don't have that information with you here, but when I was calling and talking to the treasurers of the 4 townships to try to find out how many people were actually collecting room tax, one of the municipalities, who has a new treasurer, said, I'm only getting 4 or 5 that are paying. And they have over 80 that are licensed in that township. And I said, well, you got to get your town board to do the due diligence because you're losing 30% of that income for that township. All right, so that could very easily, you take the township with over 80 licenses and you have 4 or 5 that are all that are paying and they're not doing anything to monitor them and go after them. That's a problem. All right, and I will make sure that it's in my head to get on top of it. So that could be a reason also.
Please.
I'm just gonna add one extra thing, is that over the summer, we saw, obviously, there were a lot of visitors here. We could see that just by driving up Main Street. But it seemed like we heard from a lot of our guide services, people who rent boats, that people weren't necessarily spending the extra money on those things. So I would assume that it was just
Kinda hanging out.
of the economy as a whole, that people had to cut back on certain.
Getting ice cream but not renting a boat,
Exactly.
et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. So if you asked me about our roof tax income, so far, our quarters have been up other than first quarter, with, the poor winter.
Okay.
So.
Just curious. And lastly, one of my core principles is less government's always better, low taxes is always better. However, with that being said, the 50,000, I look at that as an investment from the county. What if I have no power for this, I'm not even suggesting this, but what if we invest it more? Would that boost you guys?
Well, we do the best that we can do in getting professional advice coming in with, like I say, all the social media stuff is huge now, working with the Department of Tourism and what their studies are showing us what to do. And that's what we try to do. Obviously, if you have more money, you're going to spend more money. If you have less money, you're going to spend less money. But, we're trying to do the job. We do a very good job with the money that we have, the marketing plan that we have. But, you're competing against other areas. And we always talk Hayward Lakes, and you always hear somebody saying, we don't want to be the Dells, we don't want to be the Dells. I was in the Dells about 3 weeks ago, and I can tell you, I think you can put 150 of the Haywards easily, the whole Hayward area into the Dells. It's absolutely ridiculous down there.
I think that's a great point. I'm just thinking out loud here that this is our bread and butter. This is what we do. And Aqua's probably higher than us.
Oh,
would
everyone's,
guess.
yeah, they're spending
And
millions. Door County,
there's, like you
like over
said,
$3 million is Door County budget for marketing.
and Door County, and I
Yeah.
agree with you
Yeah.
that there's always going to be the contingency that says we want to go back to 1920 and just close it off. I don't know.
But those are
I
the
throw out
ones
a
that came
challenge
here
to the
after
county that if-
1920 also.
investing $100,000, if you get a return on that, I don't know if we can figure that out though.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I have a comment and then a question. So just, way back in the day, I was on the sports show circuit and, Hayward always had the gold standard kind of. There was a guy, Butch, that, taught me a lot.
Mhm.
And then I worked with Sherry, and I think the organization here is really good because to me, it's easier for the county to fund this because it's streamlined. It always annoyed me when you see a area that had the city doing one thing, the chamber doing something, and the CVB doing a different thing. Here it's very, I think, everybody kind of knows their role and stays in their lane. So I think that's good. You mentioned the Dells on Monday, and it kind of brought it up. You brought it up again today. I asked about what's our barriers or is there more growth there and how do we get there? And one of the things I think we've heard consistently there, like in economic development, is labor. Like resort owners are being burnt out because they can't get labor. I was out at the golf course a few weeks ago and listening to some people complain that the resorts in their lake, now that kind of the season's over, have cut their hours to Fridays and Saturdays, and they were unhappy about that. So, as far as investments go in more marketing, has the Hayward Lakes ever seriously looked at labor? And you mentioned the Dells, like a J1 visa program to bring people in to fill labor, and then how do we get housing for them? And should we invest in some affordable housing?
Well, affordable housing is absolute, because it's not out there. we did in 2019, we used the visa and we had 3 Europeans in, and we had them in you get them in for like maybe 7 to 9 weeks maybe total that you get them. and you pick them up at the airport, your first thing you have to do is take them to the Social Security Administration office, and they get a Social Security number. And then you have to house them, you feed them, you take care of everything with them. And so you have to have the property to do this. Now, Garmisch up in Cable, they bought what used to be the Rookery, and that he's using that for housing for people. All right, and converted a restaurant into housing so that he could house people up there and could get people to come up and work. You know, we need affordable housing because there's not people around to work, you know, and who comes up here and moves here and retires here, they don't bring anything to the labor force. They bring to the economy because they're willing to go out and dine. They're willing to go out and buy the toys that we have that everyone plays with, but don't ask them to have their grandkids come and work because it doesn't happen. You know, so I mean, yeah, we definitely need affordable housing. And I'm sure when you see, and I don't know what stage it's at with the old Hayward National putting in park models there, I'm sure there will be people that are young retirees that will be moving park models in there, and they come up here and that's their summer job. And then they go become snowbirds during the winter. And I'm sure that they're going to have people in there that are going to be doing, you know, that type of situation with the park models.
Yeah, so you're saying, you know, it goes back to that housing thing, which is at the core of a lot of this, but I don't know, I just throw it out there as a question to keep pondering for all of us, so. Are there any other questions?
I bring it up because, you know, like some properties have taken revenue generating cabins and turned them into accommodations for the workers. Like the Dells is an example. I think some of the resorts there got together and bought some old hotels just to house their workers in. And does there need to be a convening here of the partners to establish some
Sort of co-op or something?
transient housing or transient worker housing or something like that everybody shares in the cost but benefits from the,
Yeah,
does that mean the additional labor should mean longer seasons, more hours?
all right, going back to, if you throw another 50 grand at it, but you don't they come, but then you can't service it.
Right.
So,
Right. And you're only going to get them in the peak summer. You're going to get them probably from mid-June to maybe mid-August is all that you're really going to get them. Try to get them. When we got ours, and I did all the contracts in 2019, okay, the gal that was in charge of it, she had Wisconsin, Minnesota, and I think Illinois. And do you know how many, this was in 2019, how many, one firm, she said she has 15,000 visa in the Wisconsin Dells here, 15,000. Okay, they're just like in barracks down there is where they're at, you know. And the other thing is that they have like transportation there, because if you're looking here, we're spread out. So if you turned around at a central location and had barracks or whatever you're going to call them, you know, housing for these people, you're going to have to get them out.
We'll give the
Yeah,
extra
the-
15,000
yeah.
to transit if they'll run the workers around all.
there you go.
Yeah,
Now
there
we're
there you go. Yeah, that's what you'd have to do.
You have a question, Tom?
Okay. If what? We would have to relook at our marketing plan. We'd have to say, okay, if we got more money, what would we do with it? Like I said, we'd be back talking to our professionals to help us out with all the elements of our marketing plan. And right now, sports shows are something that we're going down with. When you mentioned Butch, okay, Butch did the sports shows and he did all of our shows for us. So it made it easy unless there was a duplicate with two shows going on at the same time. But he was making almost $40,000 a year,
Wow.
not a 1099, you know, $40,000 that he was taking in doing sports shows. But he did all of them and you knew he had everything. He knew what all to take. It was easy beans because it was his job. And that's what he did all winter long.
Or button up against
Yeah.
a timeline
Yeah.
here. We appreciate your time
Okay,
very much
you
and the
bet.
information is very helpful. And I think it
Yeah.
stimulated some thinking here and
Okay.
maybe we'd have you back. if,
Okay,
we
come
get
around.
moving. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, I can be brief on the ambulance billing.
Yes, please.
All right. Looking at the, if you can pull it up, Andy. The aging report, I guess the one thing I'll point out briefly, the amount current went down a little from the previous month, but with the new billing company, we're starting to get some in those middle month categories. But the good news is the over 120 days continues to go down. So we're not letting things get to the point where they were. Other than that, nothing has changed a whole lot. You can look at the other graphs on your own. I guess since it was brought up, if you wanted to go down to the calls by township, Andy. Here you can see, where Round Lake, Spider Lake are. They're kind of in the middle of the number of calls that we're receiving.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've kind of understood is for that new ambulance, I mean, you would look at a portion of Round Lake, because primarily that east side of Round Lake, all of Spider Lake, and somebody said possibly a portion of Lenroot, which I guess would be the southeast portion of Lenroot. So I think it's those, but even those numbers, when you add them up,
Lenroot's a little higher, but yeah.
well, it wouldn't be all of Lenroot though, I don't think.
Top Hayward services one.
So I guess I'm just personally not confused. I guess confused, a very passionate, maybe it's just human emotion, because it's a very passionate appeal for it. The numbers don't seem to support. And I don't know if they may see that and not matter, because I guess if it's your loved one, it's not going to matter so much. So it's I'll just say it seems to be a lot of emotionally charged thought that if money was not an issue, it'd be an easy decision. And then you try to support with the numbers, it becomes more of a challenge. And so I guess I'm belaboring the point, but.
All right, I guess the final thing I would say then is the ambulance is running at a $25,000 deficit through August 31st. So basically break even. So that's good. And I will end my report there.
Brayden, did you have anything on investments that we have?
Yeah, there's not a lot of change. This is through August, so it was not impacted yet by the rate change. The interest is pretty consistent with where we've seen at this point. For the month, we made 114 and some change. So on track to exceed budget. All right.
It's okay.
And again, beginning in August and for sure in October, we'll see the rates on the right are going to have gone down.
Okay. Now that we know you can be this quick, you're going to have a different standard. Only joking. Future agenda items, any suggestions? Any correspondence or reports from conferences, meetings? Stacy, you and Ron were at the,
Yeah, we went to the Wisconsin Counties Association Conference and
you liked it?
it was great. It was good educational and yeah, it was good. It was good to meet up with the other counties and I think we're doing it right up here in Sawyer County.
Okay, thank you.
Just quickly, we sat in, Stacy and I did on Andy Phillips's and Rebecca's seminars, and they're really educational. You sit in on them, so
Excellent.
we took advantage of that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for going. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.